the sacrament of the Eucharist, the third of the initiation or gateway sacraments that we're going to speak of today. And it is the final sacrament of initiation. It's also, as we know from the words of Lumen Gentium, the source and summit of our lives and of our worship. Forget actually if it's Lumen Gentium or Sacrosanctum Concilium, but basically that definition comes from Vatican II. It is the sacrament of sacraments. I'm using some of the words of the fathers to describe this. And all other sacraments are geared to the Eucharist, are geared to this sacrament. And this is the role the sacrament had in the early church. This is Ambrose, the Bishop of Milan, writing in the 4th century, early 4th century, about the procession of the people who had just been baptized into the church going to the Eucharist. This is a description. These are his words. The people have been purified and enriched by their wonderful gifts. Begin to walk in procession towards the altar of God, to God who rejoices in my youth. Having stripped themselves of the last traces of the ancient error, renewed in the youth of the eagle, they hastened to go to the heavenly banquet, crying, "You have prepared a table before me." Unquote. This is an exact quote from Ambrose, and obviously he's referring to the 23rd Psalm. You have prepared a table before me. So this all kind of comes full circle from what I did at the introduction of this series. We have many scriptural proofs, obviously, that go towards the Eucharist. We don't have a whole lot of time today to go into all of them, but we can address a few. The first time we see a sacrifice of bread and wine being offered in the Old Testament, we see the priest of Salem, Melchizedek, the priest king of Salem, Melchizedek, offering a sacrifice of bread and wine to Abraham, coming in as a sort of a triumphant warlord. We then have many other references, for example, the manna that falls in the desert for the people of Israel to eat every day, year after year, picking it off the ground, not being able to store it because they couldn't hoard it because it would go bad. So every day they have to trust that the Lord will provide for them for the next day. And every morning they have to walk out and see if the manna is still there, So it's also a matter of an exercise of faith, right? So that manna, that bread from heaven, is then that whole theme is caught up in the idea of the bread, the unleavened bread that is eaten together with the lamb of the sacrifice at Passover. So fast forward, a lot of time, thousands of years, 1,000 years anyway, from Abraham to Moses, and arrive in the land of Egypt at the time of the deliverance of the people of Israel. And the angel, the Lord had told Moses that the angel of the Lord would come to the houses of the Israelites and of the Egyptians, and that he was actually the angel of death, and that the only way that the Israelites would be able to escape certain death from the angel of death would be to do what? To sacrifice the lamb, the Passover lamb, and to sprinkle or smear his blood on the lintels and doorposts of their houses. And then at that point, the angel of death would pass over that house. So fast forward another 1,000 years or so, and you have Jesus celebrating the Passover, which will become the Eucharist. But he does it within the context of the Passover Seder meal of the Jews. The term Pesach, the Hebrew term Pesach, which refers to that Passover, is translated in the Romance languages as Pasqua, as Easter. So there's a close connection, even linguistically speaking, between that idea of the Passover, not in English, because the word for Easter derives, I think, from Old English, but in the Romance languages, you have a very clear connection of that translation, almost transliteration, between Pesach and Pasqua. Pasqua in Italian, Pasqua in Spanish, Pâques in French.